One does not simply watch all three Lord of the Rings movies in one sitting.
They watched the extended versions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We did that.
And we barely survived. I mean, I survived pretty well because I'd seen them before, but I don't know how you survived.
It has been 6 days, and I don't think I've recovered.
Oh, I definitely haven't recovered.
No.
I'm still tired. I'm still like, my body is like, what the hell happened?
Yeah. It's weird because that's kind of like what a regular day is for me, is just like sitting for 12 plus hours.
But it's different when you're sitting
different.
and eating for like hours at a time, you know?
And you're also using your brain more, I feel like.
Yeah. And you're using your eyes like,
yes,
all day long.
Yeah, I can't just close my eyes because then you're going to miss one of the most important scenes of the movie because every single scene is like extremely important, which is crazy how that happens.
Considering that it's like 12 hours of movie.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, weirdly enough for me, like I had trouble falling asleep some nights this week, which you would not think, you would think it would be the opposite where I'm so tired I would fall asleep randomly.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. So I don't know what's up with me. I guess Lord of the Rings just wakes me up.
Yeah, it gets you excited to talk about, which is just what you're going to be doing.
Which is why I have 5 pages of notes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So buckle in, everyone.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome back to the Uncultured Pop Culture Podcast. As usual, I'm David, joined by
Brandon.
That's right. We're not doing last names because it's informal this week.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just
I was
made
waiting.
it up on the spot.
I was fully prepared to have to say my last name this week, and I didn't.
I don't know. It's Lord of the Rings. We're gonna go with our first names because that's what everyone else in Lord of the Rings does. We call each other by nicknames.
Oh, I was gonna say David son of blank, and Brandon son of blank.
Yeah, there we go. But yes, we are talking about Lord of the Rings. As some of you might have noticed, there isn't an album listed.
There is not.
Because we're talking about 3 very long movies.
Very long
movies, because these are the extended versions.
These are the extended cuts of all 3.
Yes, and it's Brandon's first time watching these movies.
Yes.
So because of that, we're going to talk about the songs in the credits at the end. That's going to be the music section. But first, we're going to be talking about these movies.
But before all of that, what have you been watching this week or listening to?
So I honestly haven't listened to like anything this week.
Fair. I didn't expect that.
Yeah. You know what I did? Well, obviously I listened to the stuff for the podcast, but I actually remembered something that I watched this past week on like last episode where I forgot what I watched. But I watched a TV movie, which is like no one knows about, but it's John Carpenter's like one of his first movies. He's the guy that did Halloween and The Thing. And it's like one of his best movies. And I'm going to shout it out here and say that everyone should watch it. It's called Someone's Watching Me. It's a thriller TV movie, and it's so good.
When is it from?
Well, it released, I don't know when he made it exactly, but it released same year as Halloween. So 1970, I want to say 78.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's older, but it's so good.
Nice.
And it's like, I'm like, why does no one talk about this movie? Although that's any TV movie before like 1999 or something.
TV movies are just forgotten about, including by myself, because I just, like, you know, it combines one thing that I like and one thing I'm like, eh. But, you know,
but I recommend,
besides Disney Channel original movies.
That's different. I mean,
exactly.
You got to watch
that's
High School Musical.
Yes. Yeah.
But we'll watch it on the podcast for sure because I think it's worth it. It's really good.
I can't remember if John Carpenter is one of the directors I put every single film down.
I'm not sure, but I mean, we'll watch his movies in any case because we got like Halloween, The Thing.
I know there's a few on there, which is when when I saw a few names, or I saw a few of the same names, I was like, all right, I should probably add all the rest of them. Yeah. You know? Which
we still have to finish that list, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever going to be finishing it.
That's true.
But because we have to watch the Minecraft movie now as well.
Oh, God. I might go see that tomorrow.
Oh, really?
And then I'll tell you if it's worth it. Or if it
I don't think it will be.
It won't be worth it, but it might be worth it in like, oh, this is so bad, we need to talk about it.
I have a strong feeling that it's not even going to be like that. I think it's just going to be bad enough that it's not enjoyable. but not bad enough where you're like, wow, this sucks. I have a feeling it's going to be like in the 30 to 50% range.
I could see that, honestly. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
But what have you been listening to?
I listened to a few albums last week. Nothing that really stuck with me. I listened to the new Lucy Dacus album, who I was a fan of. She's from Boy Genius.
I say this every episode, but I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, that's fine. She's a good songwriter, but this album was not well written, unfortunately. And I really do like her, and I'm afraid that I'm kind of like losing what I liked about her. But
like going the Katy Perry route, maybe?
No, not entirely. I just think that her style is kind of over with in a weird way.
Yeah.
The very like girl with guitar, heavy focus on the lyrics is kind of like, it's almost phasing out at this point. Like we're getting back into production, which ultimately I think is for the best because that's what I like. The kind of music I like is very like maximalist and there's a lot going on. And every time you listen to it, you'll hear something new instead of just like a stripped down song, which is good in some instances, but you know,
kind of balance, I guess.
Yeah. But I didn't think that album was very good. There were a few songs on it that I will probably listen to again, but nothing where I was like incredibly blown away by like her other albums.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. And then I listened to Perfume Genius's album, which is kind of the same. Nothing really has been hitting that strong for me. But for context, we're recording this on a Friday, which is new for us.
First time ever, honestly.
But there are at least 5 albums that came out today that I'm like really excited to listen to. So I think next...
Do albums release typically on a Friday?
Yeah. Okay. Everything should release on a Friday. New Music Friday.
Okay.
Are you familiar with this term?
I've heard it. Yeah, I've seen like the playlist on Spotify.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Friday makes sense.
This was a whole,
for this podcast.
This was a whole thing. Yeah, right. This was a whole thing. I want to say like 2015. I don't even know who like started the push of it, but everything used to release on Tuesdays, and that sucked.
For music, that's really
everything.
Weird.
There's still like some legacy stuff that releases on Tuesdays. I think Billboard still updates their charts on Tuesdays, and radio airplay is mostly done on Tuesdays as well. So the song will come out on Friday. And then it's like a few days before it'll be on the radio. Yeah. Which I don't know. It's very weird. But so there was a push to like move everything to Fridays and it worked. And I remember I was watching a YouTube video. I remember I was in a hotel somewhere. I don't know where this was. This was in the summer of 2015, I think, or 2016. And I was watching YouTube and there was an ad that I got and it said, "Don't you hate it when you go out to a club and a DJ's playing old music that came out on a Tuesday?" And I was like, I don't know if I do. I don't know if I'm 14 or 15.
It does kind of feel like one of those minuscule problems that everyone's
but I don't know, it all changed. And I mean, I think it's for the best. I like listening to new music on a Friday.
I mean,
and
it
then
makes
also
sense, for the weekend.
Yes. And then you have Thursday night, which is more fun than staying up late on a Monday night to listen to the new music.
Yeah. I guess it kind of fits in with like the movies releasing on the Thursday night now. And then,
Exactly. Because I think, did movies used to do Tuesdays or not? Or was that just solely a music thing?
Well, the way that it used to be was instead of like rolling out in every single theater in the country, or like in a lot of theaters in the country, they would roll out little by little. For instance, they'd be released in like 5 theaters in some like cities, right? Like Los Angeles, New York, kind of like a limited release now where they release it little and then it builds. That's how all movies used to be released. So it wasn't like the day specifically, I don't think. Yeah. But it was like, it would be released little by little. And then like Jaws changed that. And that's when like in the 80s, the blockbusters started.
Gotcha.
So then everything started coming out everywhere all at once. So I know like that's how it happened with movies.
That's a movie we have to watch as well. Everything Everywhere All at Once.
And Jaws.
And Jaws.
Yeah,
very
we gotta
true.
add both of those.
I think we do have Jaws on there. I remember seeing it.
We definitely have Jaws because we have like all of Spielberg's stuff on there.
And I may have done every John Williams composed movie as well.
That's a good list.
Yeah.
Yeah. At some point we'll have to do Star Wars too.
Shall we get into another legendary composer's film, Howard Shore?
Howard Shore. Yeah. And not the first time we've talked about him.
Correct.
After 7.
Yeah.
It's a 7N, sorry.
It's the 7N.
Yeah.
The score is incredible. We can just start there. That it's it's amazing and it...
One of the best scores ever written for film.
Yeah, it completely like makes the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Star Wars to me.
Yeah, it would not be... The world will not be the same without a score. Which I want to really talk about like him in the background that much.
That's-
Just because
yeah.
like I think the music speaks for itself. Like 100%, they chose the right person.
Yes.
Which is interesting because like you listen to like Seven and like the score from there, and it's a very different score. Like if you hear that, I don't think you'd specifically think like, oh, this is the person.
Right. And
But
it's
I think
also,
they had like the foresight, you know?
yeah, I forget what movie we talked about it on, but that's one where it just like blends into the world.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
one is
and-
one where it becomes like, it's a piece of the world that you're paying attention to.
Exactly. And I'm sure that he had like other scores that they listened to that like told them that he was the perfect person for this too, you know? I'm not saying like they had no way of knowing.
So the Fellowship of the Ring is the subtitle, or I don't know.
It's the subtitle. We'll actually get into the titles a little bit when it comes to the books.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just took the book subtitles and put them in. I think they are subtitles. In the films, at least they are.
Okay, because I've also seen them referred to not as Lord of the Rings :
Yeah,
like I've seen it as just
they are just referred to as, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about why it is 3 books in the first place. But let's get into like the IMDb log lines. I'm going to do all 3 instead of just doing like a trilogy one, because I don't think there even is like a trilogy one.
So we'll just like talk about the first movie first, right? Or not? I don't, or should we do all 3 of them? Because as I was saying before we started recording, we watched these all in one sitting, and
so they're kind of
everything
like melded
kind of
together.
Yeah. And they all tell one like story.
I mean, I will say like, because when it comes to the background, because they were filmed concurrently, it's kind of hard to talk about them separately.
Yeah. Okay.
The IMDb logline for Fellowship of the Ring is as follows. A meek hobbit from the Shire and 8 companions set out on a journey to destroy the powerful One Ring and save Middle-earth from the Dark Lord Sauron. I also wonder if you, like, how hard it was for you with the names. But we'll get into that.
The names weren't as hard as the people.
Well, I know a lot of people get tripped up by Sauron and Saruman.
Yeah, I like saw the connection there, but no, I knew they were different. And also for context, I have read The Hobbit, and I think I read one of the books as well with my dad. I don't fully remember, but I remember reading The Hobbit because it's the version we had was huge. It's like 900 pages.
I feel like The Hobbit is such a smaller book, though.
I don't know. I
Maybe
remember
you guys
seeing
have like
it, and it was
big print version.
Maybe, yeah, it was massive though, because I remember seeing it.
Well, I remember some copies have like all like the trilogy and The Hobbit in one book. Maybe it was one of those.
This one had a bunch of like extra maps and stuff in it as well, so I don't know. But I think it was just The Hobbit that it was. But anyway, yeah. So I have some context there of like who some of these people are,
and you know, like the backstory of like Bilbo and that stuff.
I think so.
Yeah, or at least what that's what The Hobbit is.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's more that you're getting.
I mean, that's all you really need.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
But then for the 2 towers, while Frodo and Sam edge closer to Mordor with the help of the shifty Gollum, the divided fellowship makes a stand against Sauron's new ally Saruman and his hordes of Isengard. And then lastly, for Return of the King, Gandalf and Aragorn lead the world of men against Sauron's army to draw his gaze from Frodo and Sam as they approach Mount Doom with the One Ring. So let's get into it. Credits.
Oh, yes. This will be fun.
There are a lot of credits.
Yeah.
I want to first say, like, for some of the credits, I'm just going to say Weta Workshop. They did all the sets. They did all, like, the CGI. They did, like, almost, like, 90% of the movie production-wise is Weta. I am just going to say Weta because there are so many people that worked there that, like, I couldn't possibly list all of them. But obviously, like, they all deserve respect and, you know, like, they all worked on it together. Directed by Peter Jackson. Written by Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and only for 2 Towers, Steven Sinclair. The cinematography was done by Andrew Lesney. And as I said, special effects, set, digital effects, and more by Weta Workshop, led by Richard Taylor and Tanya Rogers. The costumes were done by Richard Taylor and Nyla Dixon. The first film, Fellowship of the Ring, was edited by John Gilbert. The 2 Towers was edited by Michael Horton, and The Return of the King was edited by Jamie Selkirk. And I believe they had to get 3 because there was too much for
I was gonna say, if they're like shooting them all at the same time, you know, like
they had to have
crazy.
3 editors.
Yeah.
And I think like Jackson might have even considered editing them himself, but he was like, no, I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. music by Howard Shore, obviously, as we talked about a little bit. And also, I think it's very important to shout out conceptual designers Alan Lee and Ian Howe, who we'll talk a little bit about. Sorry, Alan Lee and John Howe. I messed that up. That's on me. And now let's quickly get into starring.
Yes.
I'm not going to list every single person, but there are a lot of people. So let's start off. And I'm interested to know if you knew any of these actors like before as I go down.
Yes, I think I knew one of them, and I'd heard the names of like 5, but never had any idea what they looked like.
We'll see. Elijah Wood.
Yeah, I've heard of him, but I didn't know him from anything.
Yeah, now you do. Ian McKellen.
Yes, I knew him from The Hobbit because I watched the first Hobbit,
Right.
and then my dad and I were kind of like, these aren't very good.
Yeah.
Let's not watch the other two.
We need to exercise that movie from your soul.
Yeah.
Viggo Mortensen.
Heard the name, did not know.
Sean Astin.
Yes.
Billy Boyd.
I knew him. I did not know that Sean Astin was in this movie, though.
Yeah. Did you know him from Goonies?
No, I've never seen the Goonies. I knew him from Stranger Things.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
I knew that he was in the Goonies from Stranger Things when he was cast because everybody's like, oh my God, he's an 80s guy.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, which we need to watch Goonies because I do love that movie.
Yeah, I believe that is on the list.
Yeah. Billy Boyd.
Don't know. Never knew.
Pippin. Dominic Monaghan.
Never knew.
Orlando Bloom.
Heard the name and didn't realize he was married to Katy Perry.
Yeah.
But now I know.
I wonder how that's going with her new album. Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, somebody asked him like in an interview what he thought, and he like very clearly had not listened to
And
it.
he's just like, whatever.
I think so, yeah.
Also, I will say, famous for Pirates of the Caribbean, which we will also watch. I love those movies.
We'll have to do those in one sitting as well.
Oh, hell no. I'm not watching the last two. I've never seen the last two, actually. I don't want to watch them.
Well, then you can't say you love those movies.
Well,
You
I love the
one
original
movie.
trilogy.
Oh, I got you.
There's
The
5.
original trilogy. That's what I meant. I didn't.
yeah.
I don't. The other
Yeah,
two
don't
don't
worry.
matter. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay, then I'm down for that.
Okay.
I'm so down. John Rhys Davies.
Don't know. I mean, I know, but
I know.
I didn't know him.
Sean Bean, which I feel like you
I've
probably
heard the
of him.
name, but I've never seen him in
Yeah,
anything.
he dies in every single movie he's in. Spoiler alert for everyone that didn't know. Andy Serkis.
Heard the name. Did
Armenian.
not. Right. I didn't know him, but I knew he was Armenian because you had told me that.
Yeah, well, to be fair, part Armenian, but still, that counts.
The part that has a last name that was changed.
Exactly. Christopher Lee.
That's the one I know because I knew him from Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Yep.
Hell yeah, baby. Bernard Hill.
I don't
also-
even remember who he plays.
He plays the Theoden, the king of Rohan.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Who was also in Titanic.
Oh, that's on the list.
Oh, yeah. Ian Holm. He plays Bilbo.
Yeah.
Liv Tyler.
I knew of her as Steven Tyler's daughter, but not anything else.
I found out later that she was his daughter.
Oh,
Because I grew up with these movies, and I was like, oh, she looks so much better than he does. To be honest.
Yeah.
Kate Blanchett.
I knew
I bet I've heard of her,
but I
yeah.
don't know that I had ever seen her in anything.
We'll definitely see her in more things for sure.
She's like a film actress. Like, like
Yeah, like she's out of all like this whole cast, she's one of the biggest actresses, I would say, or just biggest actors overall.
Yeah.
For sure. Hugo Weaving.
Did not know.
He plays Elrond. Also known for the Matrix movies, which we'll have to watch too.
Yes.
Miranda Otto.
Did not know.
She's less known. She's mainly known for playing Eowyn. Brad Dourif, who I love, he plays Wormtongue.
Did not know.
He's in Deadwood, which is one of my favorite shows.
Yes, which you just got DVD copies of the other
exactly.
day.
So now I have a Blu-ray and DVD copy.
Yes.
Very exciting. David Wenham, who plays Faramir, who's I think also mainly known for this.
Yeah, I did not know him.
Yeah, this and
He
was in Van Helsing.
He looks really familiar to me, and I was trying to figure out who he looks like.
I mean, not to be mean, but I kind of feel like he also kind of looks like average white guy.
I mean, yeah, but there's something
Yeah.
where I was like, I don't know.
Carl Urban, who plays Éomer.
Did not know him.
He's known a lot nowadays for The Boys. He's in that show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Never seen it.
Me neither. But I've heard it's good.
Yeah, I've also heard that.
And then John Noble, who plays Denethor, the asshole dad.
Also did not know him.
I knew of him from this. And I will say he does such a great job with like a really not good character. I don't want to say bad because it's not like he's Sauron, but you know,
Yeah.
he's close, let's say. But before we get into the movies, let's quickly get into who wrote the books.
Yes.
J.R.R. Tolkien, born John Ronald Reuel Tolkien in 1892.
I will also say I didn't realize when these books came out.
Yeah.
I thought they were way older.
It's interesting that you say that because these books were the birth of modern fantasy.
Yeah.
Like, so I guess it does make sense that you would be like, oh, they came out in 1852.
Well, I was thinking more like 1920s.
Yeah,
But-
that makes sense.
Because, you hear modern and it's like, well, that's kind of when modern
It's interesting
started.
because these books came out around the same time that Dune came out, and Dune was kind of like the birth of modern sci-fi, or just like science fiction fantasy, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how like the two works of art that informed their genres both came out around the same time.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say, for those of you who are wondering where like I'm getting this info from, a lot of it is coming from like the DVD extras that come with these movies, which are famous in the Lord of the Rings community. I also got a lot of this information, and I don't typically do this, but from a podcast, I do want to shout out, if anyone's interested in more in-depth background, go listen to the What Went Wrong podcast. They talk about what went wrong with movies. They did like 3 episodes on Lord of the Rings. So if you want to find out more, I highly recommend, because it's like a really in-depth look into it, and it's very funny. But Tolkien was always interested in languages, and he grew up to be a philologist, which is someone that like studies languages pretty much. He grew up making up his own languages pretty much, which you can like see in his work. And in some ways, he wrote Lord of the Rings as like a history for his languages.
Yeah,
It's just a novel.
That's like so cool. And
Yeah.
that's something that I really like. It makes me want to read these books now, because I haven't read the books. I read The Hobbit, but I haven't read like.
And you look at like his
series.
other works, like the Silmarillion, like all of that too. You can see how, because he not only like constructed Elvish, he constructed different versions, and then he like constructed older versions. Like it's crazy how much he came up with.
Yeah, I love like that kind of stuff where
yeah.
it's like real. It's like something fake, but it could be real.
Yeah.
And I think
yeah.
that like he did such a great job with that. And I also love the maps. That's what got me into it when I was younger, because I love a good map.
And I love that they have the maps in, I think, like almost every single edition of the books.
Yeah.
Which I'm very happy about. He also strongly believed that fantasy was like a genre that should be respected, that it wasn't just for kids, and that it could have like actual genre. And in many ways, he would argue that myths, should be viewed like that too. The Hobbit itself was, interestingly enough, not really like a grown-up book. It started off as a bedtime story for his children. And then somebody knew, was like, dude, you should publish this. And he did, and it was successful. And so his publisher was like, write a sequel. And so he spent 17 years writing Lord of the Rings. And of course, Lord of the Rings turned out being a lot more serious, to the point where you could argue it's not really even for kids. It's for adults.
That's kind of how it was like explained to me, is that The Hobbit is like the kids' book, and the Lord of the Rings is once you get old enough, you'll understand.
Yeah, which I think is why like it was so hard to adapt The Hobbit into movies and keep them in the same style as The Lord of the Rings. And I think that's a large part of why they weren't successful.
And the fact that there's 3 of them.
Yeah,
which didn't
like
need
there
to
are
happen.
other issues, obviously, but I think that was like, to anyone adapting it, it would be hard to get past that.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to say, like, aside from the fact that he wrote Lord of the Rings as a history for his languages, he also wrote it as a history or like a mythology for England, because he was always sad that like, Greeks had the Greek myths and the Scandinavian countries had the North myths, but England didn't really have anything because of like all their invasion, whatever.
Because of the way that they are.
Well, yeah. Well, I think because like, the Celts had it, but then the Normans invaded and then all that, whatever. This is turning into a history podcast.
Like the Vikings came as well from Norway.
They all came.
Yeah.
And
the Romans invaded.
And the Romans,
yeah.
Pretty much almost as invaded as Armenia. Anyway, moving on.
I was going to say Poland as well.
Well, Poland too, yeah.
To tie it back to me personally.
Stay strong, Poland.
Yeah, stay strong, Poland.
And of course, Lord of the Rings, well, at first it was kind of like, people were like, It went on to be considered one of the greatest like accomplishments in the literary world ever. And so, of course, Hollywood came knocking. There were a lot of attempts.
Let's go, Hollywood.
Let's go, Hollywood. There were a lot of attempts. I'm just going to briefly mention a few that you have to mention these. One of them was an attempt by director John Borman. He wanted to make a sexy version This included Aragorn and Boromir kissing.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
a gay version? In like what was this, like the
I don't
60s
know,
or
like,
70s?
yeah, it was, I think,
Wow.
like 70s. It's like it's gay, but then it still had like Aragorn with his other love triangle thing.
Yeah,
So it's
okay.
like kind of maybe bisexual.
Yeah, bisexual King Aragorn.
Hell yeah.
Wow.
Go for it. It also had Galadriel seducing Frodo.
Oh,
Which is
interesting.
like elf
Yeah.
and hobbit sex. Pretty cool. I don't know.
I guess so, yeah.
But then, and I found this to be the funniest, Aragorn would at one point resurrect Eowyn with a magic orgasm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very
That
60s, very
Yeah.
cocaine heavy.
Yeah.
And the other version I have to mention,
Wait, was that supposed to be like a blockbuster, or is that going to be like a porno?
it was going to be like a porny blockbuster, I
Okay.
guess. And I think they
Okay.
wanted to make it like one movie too.
Interesting.
So cut out everything and just replace it with sex.
Yeah.
Why not? Another version is, of course, if you're in UK in the 60s, it has to involve the Beatles. There was going to be a version with the Beatles. I want to see if you can guess who they were going to play, though.
Wait,
Do you know
so
them well enough?
all four of the
So-
Beatles were going to be the four hobbits?
So, no.
Oh.
John actually was not going to be in it.
Oh.
He was like, I want to
Lame.
produce it, which is very John Lennon.
Yeah,
So
well, he
pretty much you
sucks.
have Paul McCartney,
Yes.
Ringo Starr, and George Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to just tell you who they were going to...
I mean, can I guess that? Yeah. I feel like Paul is either going to be Frodo because he wants to be the lead, or he's going to be Aragorn because he wants to be the hero.
He was going to play Frodo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. George is going to be Sam.
No, actually.
Okay.
George was gonna play Gandalf.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then Ringo. God, who knows what Ringo is going
Ringo,
to do?
he's
Gollum?
He's the I mean, that fits, to be honest, now that I think about it. But he's like the blue collar worker. He's Sam. 'Cause
He's Sam. Okay.
It's Ringo. But yeah, they went to Stanley Kubrick and asked him to direct it, and he turned them down, and that
That's
was like the end of the project.
Probably for the best. Yeah. The Beatles were going to act. Can they?
Well, the thing is, they made movies, but they acted as themselves.
Right.
Which works great. I love like A Hard Day's Night and Help, which are the two that I've seen. I don't know if they could have like
played characters.
I don't know. It probably would have just been the Beatles and just like
Oh,
in a
look,
Beatles-
there's Paul McCartney going on an adventure.
Yeah, exactly. He's
Yeah.
like, oh, I got a ring, but I'm left-handed. I don't know. I've tried to do it.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about him other than
Anyway.
he explodes on stage.
Explodes.
Yeah, you haven't seen the videos?
What do you mean by explodes?
Live and let die.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like blew up. Until,
no, like
a
it looks
building
like he does.
Oh, okay. I've never seen him on stage, come to think of it, like in a video. But of course, the version that came to be was
Peter Jackson.
the animated 1978 version.
okay.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah,
I wonder if
I was
you're
gonna say,
Peter
forgot
Jackson.
it. I didn't know if you were gonna cover that one.
Well, I just had to briefly mention it. It was a financial success, but critically, people did not really like it. They were going to turn it into two movies, and they only made the first one. And the director, like through the production of the Peter Jackson ones, was like jealous, pretty much. He was annoyed that he never got to finish it. But I did bring it up because I think you can see an influence in Jackson's movies. Because he had seen the animated one before. Obviously, like from what I've heard, because I haven't seen the other ones, and I can totally see it because his versions are so good. Jackson's versions are like the definitive ones. You know, like the other one does not hold a candle to Jackson's ones, but there were still things he got from those movies.
I was gonna say, I assume he like built on the world that was like established, like the cinematic world.
Well, yeah, I think he like borrowed some of the good parts that were present. Yeah. Which, for those of you who are like, how could he? Every director does that. Like,
Well, that's kind of the point of it. Like, somebody sets a precedent. It's
Exactly.
like directing for TV as well. Like
Yeah.
the person to do the pilot sets like what you're going to do.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. I do want to say real quick, I didn't know Peter Jackson was Kiwi, and that's why they shot it
Yeah.
in New Zealand. I just assumed they were like, oh shit, New Zealand looks cool. I didn't realize he was like, let's do it in New Zealand.
There is another reason why they shot in New Zealand, and that's the fact that New Zealand has almost every single type of topography.
Yeah.
They have mountains, they have forests, they have like plains. They have almost everything.
Somewhere I would love to go.
Yeah, I want to go there
Also,
too.
love the accent. The Kiwi accent is probably
It's so
like
much fun.
top 3.
I would love to like try and do it on the podcast, but
Oh my
I
God,
know
no.
I would not succeed, so I'm not going to do it.
Maybe if we get famous enough to have Lord on here, she'll come on and,
there we
and
go.
speak with us.
I also never realized that Lord is Kiwi.
You didn't?
Yeah, I had no idea.
That's sad.
I just, when you said it, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, she's probably, I don't know if she's the most famous, but
As you said, Jackson is a Kiwi, born in New Zealand, and he started directing like horror movies. He was
Really?
actually like he mostly did horror movies and like adult black comedy films. And it's also New Zealand, so everything, like there were only 3 million people in the 90s there.
yeah.
So he was kind of just like, hey, you want to help on my movie? Do you want to help on my movie? So yeah, he started off with films like Bad Taste, Brain Dead, and Meet the Feebles. Meet the Feebles is like an adult, like rated R Muppet movie. I've heard. I really want to watch it. It sounds really
That sounds very interesting.
yeah. And he met Fran Walsh on these films, and she would go on to be his romantic and professional partner.
Oh, interesting. She's
Yeah,
also from New Zealand?
Yeah,
Okay.
she's also Kiwi. Yeah, and she's a screenwriter and producer
Yeah. And songwriter.
and songwriter. That's right.
Because
I
she's
forgot
on,
about
she's
that.
credited.
That's true. That's also where he met Richard Taylor and Tanya Rogers, and all together they would make Weta Workshops. And they're also Kiwi, obviously.
Shout out New Zealand.
Honestly, shout out New Zealand. So many talented people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say
Taika Waititi.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I'm kind of mixed on some of his stuff, but his
But
other
he's
films are really
successful.
good. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, and like,
No, I was just
and when he
thinking of,
hits, he does hit.
Yeah.
You know?
I was thinking of like music stuff. I forgot that there's like other film
Yeah.
people from New
I will.
Zealand.
I will say, these if they couldn't film in New Zealand, they could have filmed this in Armenia. To be honest, like
Oh, wow.
we got mountains, we got forests. What can I
So
say?
what I'm hearing is in like 30 years, you're going to basically employ the entire country of Armenia to
honestly,
make
yes,
a new Lord of the
gonna-
Rings.
we're gonna have a renaissance. We'll get
That'd be kind of
some-
cool.
That would be awesome, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like and you know, New Zealand had 3 million then. We have 3 million now.
And only
So-
growing, I would assume, as you prepare to join the EU.
little by little.
Oh, maybe.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll see how things go.
Yeah.
We'll see how this next 4 years go. Anyway,
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah, we are recording this post tariffs dropping.
yes.
So
So he started off in New Zealand, but then he eventually broke into Hollywood with his film Heavenly Creatures, which I've heard is also good. I'm gonna skip over like, oh, you know, the things he considered, the things he made, because there's a bunch of stuff here that we just don't have time to get into. But pretty much he wanted to make a fantasy film, and he was trying to come up with ideas, but every idea he came up with was just Lord of the Rings. So then finally he was like, you know what, I'm gonna make Lord of the Rings. And now we're going to talk about Harvey Weinstein.
yeah,
It's
let's go,
time.
Harvey Weinstein.
This is where he enters
We've-
our story.
We have successfully avoided him for
I know.
6 episodes.
But at this point, every episode has to have a horrible person in it.
Yeah.
We had Kevin Spacey, we had Armie Hammer, and now we got Harvey Weinstein.
I think we're also missing a few people in
Oh
there
yeah,
too.
there are more people.
That's our through line, our connection.
exactly.
To
That's our connection.
to all the other episodes.
Our connection is rapists in
Wow.
Hollywood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that really lightens the mood.
What a depressing connection. But yeah, so Jackson had a 3-picture deal with Weinstein. So he was like, hey, I want to
With Miramax or
with Miramax,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to.
So yeah, Weinstein, the Weinsteins, because it was Harvey and Bob.
Right. Yeah. And is Miramax separate from the Weinstein Company? Because I know they also produce.
Yes, I think they sold it like
Okay.
sometime in the late 90s or early 2000s.
Because I know Miramax was like affiliated with Disney for a while
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
But okay.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so Weinstein got the rights with Jackson and he was like, okay, this is the plan. We'll make 2 movies. And Jackson was like, okay. So they started to write them. They brought on Philippa Boyens, who's like a Tolkien expert. And she had never written anything before, like screenplays before
Really?
this. But they actually connected with her through Sinclair, who worked on 2 Towers. And so originally the first movie was going to end at Helm's Deep, and they had to cut out stuff obviously because it's 2 movies. But they're like, it is what it is. So they're trying to write it, and of course they're having difficulties with the Weinsteins. Bob Weinstein is like, hey, you should kill one of the hobbits just cuz. And they're like, why would we do that? And they're like, which one of them?
Bob.
And he was like, oh, just anyone, it doesn't matter. So there's having a lot of problems with the Weinstein, and finally it comes to a head when Weinstein tells Jackson that the budget for the movies can't go over $75 million.
For both
For
of them?
both.
Oh,
And
wow.
Jackson is like,
wait, 75 total, not
Yes.
75 per movie.
Yes.
Okay, that's
And
crazy.
Jackson is like, I can't do that. That's impossible.
Which still, the budgets on these are like,
Yeah.
they're not huge, which
Yeah,
is surprising
it's-
for how
altogether it's like 280 million, which is like the cost of a Marvel movie now. Like
yes.
one.
Yeah, it's kind of insane what they did.
And I do think that like the cast got paid maybe a little bit less for that.
Yeah. I just saw a thing from Elijah Wood where he
Yeah.
said that we might have been underpaid.
Yeah,
But-
he was like, we were kind of underpaid, but like ultimately, it's like the chance of a lifetime, and like
right.
they did that so the movies could be so good, kind of, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so they would have the money for the effects and the world building and stuff. But yeah, so Weinstein goes ballistic, and he's like, you know what, if
Bob or Harvey?
Harvey.
Harvey,
Well,
okay.
Bob's just,
Yeah.
being Bob there in the corner talking about killing hobbits. But yeah, Harvey goes ballistic, and he's like, you know what? If you don't make this movie for $75 million, I'm going to fire you, and we're going to make one Lord of the Rings movie directed by Tarantino. Yeah.
Wow.
And ironically, the reason why he didn't want to go over $75 million was because then he'd have to bring in Disney as like a co-producer. So that's our little throwback to what you mentioned with Miramax. They
Yeah.
were working together. So Jackson, he's like, should I not? But ultimately he's like, I can't. Like, I can't make a good movie
Which
like
props
this.
to him.
Yeah.
You know,
he was like, I'm
that's
not going to.
putting the art before everything else, which is incredible.
And he was like, I'm going to let down every single Lord of the Rings fan if I do this. So I can't. So he's like, he tells his agent, Ken Kamens, I can't do it. Tell Harvey I can't do it. And then Ken, the best agent in all of Hollywood, swoops in and he's like, hey, Harvey, what if you give us like a little bit of time to put this film into turnaround? What if you just give us that option? Which, do you know what turnaround is?
I don't.
All right. So for Brandon and everyone in our audience that doesn't know, which I also didn't know until I looked into this, turnaround is pretty much when a project stalls at a studio. The studio can put that project up for grabs. The only caveat is whoever gets that project has to pay back the money that this first studio has already put into it. So pretty much
Gotcha,
it's like
yeah.
you're getting your money back for this project while giving it away. So he's like, look, what if we just put into turnaround and, that way you'll get your money back. You won't have to spend any more. And the typical time that you get for turnaround is 6 months to 1 year. So Harvey's like, okay, but I'm not giving you 6 months. I'm not giving you 3 months. I'm giving you 28 days
28
to
days.
find someone else to pay me my money back.
Oh
for
my
this
God.
project. Yeah, it's Weinstein being Weinstein.
Yeah. No wonder nobody wanted
Yeah.
to work with him.
Oh yeah. Well, aside from the rape, obviously.
Well,
Like,
yeah, I know, but like,
No, I know,
Yeah.
I know. So Kamen reaches out. He's pulling every favor he has while Jackson puts his pitch together. Only 2 studios say that they're up for a meeting. And that's Working Title and New Line Cinema.
And was Working Title part of Lionsgate at this point?
I'm not sure. They might
I
have.
think, or MGM. I don't know who they're part of
I
now.
think they were separate at this point and later
Okay.
got bought up. Because I think they were like independent at this point.
Yeah, because they're more of like I think of
Yeah.
them as like a small budget.
Yeah, they
you
are
know,
like a
but-
smaller budget. But the thing is, they had a relationship with Jackson already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they had released one of his films, and because of that, like they wanted to work with Jackson. The problem was they met with Working Title, and Working Title was like, "Yeah, we're in the process of being sold, so we can't give you an answer until like 2 months later."
Damn.
And
Yeah.
they're like, "We don't have that time." So they go to New Line Cinema and meet with Robert Shea, the CEO. Before the meeting starts, Jackson is pulled aside and taken to Shea, and Shea is said, "Hey, before we get into the meeting, I don't think this is something that New Line Cinema wants to do."
Wow.
So then they're like, "Okay, let's go back to the meeting." He's like, "Well, this is it, but I'm going to go through the motions." So he pitches it, super dejected. According to Fran Walsh, the moment she saw him like walk back into the room, she was like, "Well, this is done. Like, it's over."
Wow.
But he pitches it, and then they're like looking at Shea. What is he going to say? And he's just staring at them, and he says, "There are 3 books, right? Why are you making 2 movies if there are 3 books?"
He's the one.
He's the one.
Oh.
Because he was pretty much like, if you can get audiences to pay for 3 movies, why are you making 2?
Mm-hmm.
And with that, Lord of the Rings was saved from Harvey
Wow.
Weinstein, and New Line Cinema picked them up.
So was that all of the money that Weinstein put in?
I don't remember how much he put in, but he did put in like several million. He actually forced New Line Cinema to pay him that money up front, which usually doesn't happen. And then he also got like 5% of the gross or something.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, because I didn't know if
Yeah.
New Line became like the primary.
They did become the primary.
yeah.
So they funded it, they did everything,
Okay.
but Harvey Weinstein still like got some money from it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's just because he had power at that time.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of power. So they jump into pre-production, working with Weta in New Zealand. I didn't want to mention this is the one they brought on John Howell and Alan Lee. And they are two artists that, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, are really important for... They gave shape to Tolkien's world through their illustrations. They were artists pretty much, and that's really why Jackson brought them on, because he like loved their illustrations so much. And I think that's kind of universal. Everyone agrees that their art has shaped their own views of Tolkien's work. So they were brought on. John Howe was tasked with like doing the dark parts, so like Mordor and all that stuff, because that's what he was influenced by. And Alan Lee was tasked with the light parts, like Rivendell, because he was influenced by that. And of course, Nyla Dixon was brought in to create the costumes along with Richard Taylor. You know, I wanted to shout her out because I think she did an amazing job.
Yeah, these costumes are incredible.
Oh, yeah. And of course, Weta pretty much brought the world to life with the sets, with the armor, with all of that. This is one of the best examples of production design and, you know, putting a world together.
Yeah,
like, ever.
it's really good.
Yeah. I think this might be like, if not like the pinnacle, like almost at the pinnacle of designing a world for film and capturing it too. Because they also in many ways led the forefront with like CGI at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I mean, obviously, like looking back, you're like, well, this is from 2001, I'm assuming is when they were doing like the CGI stuff.
Yeah.
And you can tell at some
But
points.
yeah, at some point you
but
can tell.
It's very like, it's way better than I expected it to be.
I think like 95% of it ages exceptionally well. Like obviously some stuff you're like, yeah. But I also think like the things that do age worse are the things that don't take you out of it too, you know?
Right.
And I will say like Gollum to this day, I think looks fantastic.
I hate looking at his spine too. Oh my God.
I know you can see the little, you can imagine like running your finger along it and like, feeling the bumps.
Terrifies me. I hate like looking at human spines as well. Like, and then you get that and it's like, oh God.
Talk about casting a little. There is a lot here. I'm not going to talk about.
I was looking through some of the people that were like, that were considered.
Yeah, I wish I could like mention all of them, but it's just too much. I will say Billy Boyd was cast because of his accent, and they kept it in the final film. I think it's perfect. There were, even though like they had all the other hobbits like learn a specific type of accent to kind of work with the world. With him, they're like, keep your accent. We love it. I do want to say Sean Astin had been experiencing a career slump. You know, he had obviously been a child actor, but even though his parents were, you know, famous, he's the son of Patty Duke, and I think it's Michael Astin, right?
John
Astin. Yeah, John Astin.
But even then, I was looking that up because I was curious about him.
Yeah.
And shout out LA Valley College where he went.
Hell yeah.
His dad was like one of 3 different people, and they didn't know for a long time, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But so I don't think it's technically John Astin, but I believe he's the one who like raised him.
Right.
But yeah.
He had been like experiencing a career slump. When he found out he got the part, he like started to cry out of happiness.
He's really good in it too.
So good.
And also his accent is like,
yeah,
it's believable. I didn't think it was him at first.
Yeah.
I was
because he's like an American.
Yeah,
he has an American
he's from
accent.
LA.
I know that for his audition, his favorite actor is Michael Caine, so he did a Cockney accent for the audition, which I just
Nice.
love. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that, you know, even like when you are like the son of Patty Duke, it can still be hard to, you know, find success. I did want to mention someone who almost did get cast, and that was Sean Connery, who was offered the role of Gandalf, and he was offered millions to play the role because it's Sean Connery.
I don't know how that would have gone.
Yeah, I'm happy he didn't get cast. Like, don't get me wrong. I think he's a really fun actor. Like, hell yeah, James Bond is, you know, aside from the parts that have aged badly, like it's still fun and he's really good in the role. I think he is a good actor, but not for Gandalf. But the reason he didn't take it was because he read the scripts and he was like, I don't know what the hell this is going on. I'm lost. So I'm happy he didn't accept it. And obviously in my mind, no one's better at at being Gandalf than Ian McKellen. Like he is Gandalf
Yeah,
in
that's
my mind.
very much like that's what I associate with him. When I
Yeah.
see him, it's like, oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
Gandalf.
exactly. Who was cast in the role of Aragorn but Stuart Townsend?
Who I do not know at all.
Yeah, so Townsend was like an up and coming actor. I think maybe Australian, to be honest. And they cast him, but pretty much during pre-production, or like, as they're getting ready to begin filming in New Zealand, he started like not showing up to training, pretty much being like, we'll get it on the day, stuff like that. And then everyone was like, what's going on? And Jackson quickly understood that he was pretty much overwhelmed, as a young actor in his 20s, which, it happens. Jackson finally realized that, yeah, we need to recast. Like, it's not going to work out. I do think that Townsend did kind of miss out on the opportunity of a lifetime because, he isn't really known. Like,
Yeah.
he's been in stuff for sure, but it's kind of like, you do wonder where he could have gone.
Yeah, when I saw a lot of the people who were like supposed to be cast, most of the time it was like they declined it and they felt regret or something like that. And I was like, well,
100%.
yeah, I mean, if you're gonna, this is a huge opportunity.
Yeah. I know that Uma Thurman was offered the part of Eowyn, but like she wanted to do it, but she didn't want to commit to being in New Zealand for like 3 years because she had children.
Lame. No, I mean, I would love to go to New Zealand for 3 years.
I would love to too, but I do understand like being a family.
Yeah.
But I really wish she had taken it because at that point in time she was married to Ethan Hawke, and so they had the idea of she plays Eowyn and he plays Faramir. So then like the couple at the end is the actual couple in life. And I do kind of wish that this did happen because I feel like both of these actors would have been so good in those roles. Not to say that, David Wenham and Miranda Otto aren't. I just think that those two, like, I don't know.
Yeah, there
just would have been
wasn't,
so well.
to me, there weren't any like parts where I was like, oh, this could have benefited from having a better actor. Like,
Yeah,
I
no,
feel like everybody was
definitely
pretty
not.
well cast.
I think just sometimes I do wonder, like,
Yeah.
But yeah, so Townsend was released without ever actually filming anything. And Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens right away knew who should be cast. They were like, you gotta cast Viggo Mortensen. You have to do it. And so they like asked him if he wanted to play the role. And he was like, I don't know. I haven't read these books. I don't know what it's about. But his son Henry, who was a big Lord of the Rings fan, was like, Dad, you have to do this. You have to play him. And so finally he agreed. And I think the perfect Aragorn was cast.
He was one of my favorites throughout like all three movies.
One of the best performances.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that, I'm not saying Stuart Townsend couldn't have been good, but in my mind, no one but Viggo Mortensen could have like done this role justice. And that's because he is freaking Aragorn. He would camp out on set the night before. He would carry like his sword around Wellington. He got the police called on him because he was carrying a sword. People were like, there's this madman with a sword. He signed autographs to God. Like, he is crazy, but in like the best way possible. So he is just Aragorn in real life. They went into production, but there was one role that hadn't been cast even as they were filming, and that was Gollum. This is the last casting part, I promise. I said it would be short, but it's like 20 minutes. So they didn't know how to do Gollum originally. So they were like, let's just make him CGI and we'll get a voice actor. And so they offered it to Andy Serkis, a part Armenian, part English actor. There we go.
Shout out Armenia.
Shout out Armenia. I'm sad he changed his last name though.
What could have been.
What could have been.
Yeah.
He was also unsure of the part because he's like, okay, it's just like voice acting. It's not I'm not going to be on camera. But again, LOTR, which is the acronym for Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
LOTR fans came to the rescue. His wife, Lorraine, who I think was his girlfriend then, she heard, like, he was like, yeah, they're offering me this part of Gollum. And she was like, you have to take this role. You have, like, no matter if it's just voice acting. So he was like, okay, fine. I'll, like, start thinking about this character. The inspiration, so you know how Gollum does, like a little Gollum
Right,
sound?
yeah.
The inspiration from that came from his cat. He was working on the character.
I can totally see that.
And he saw his cat, like, coughing up a hairball, and he was like, oh, that's like the basis for this whole character.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Was he in New Zealand with everybody else?
So I believe at that time he was in New England, but he
New
did
England?
or England.
Yeah.
Everything is new in this
Yeah.
episode. I'm not sure when exactly he went to New Zealand, but at some point Jackson realized that just having Serkis's voice wouldn't work because so much of the performance was Serkis's like physical
Yeah.
movements. Even when just doing the voice, he would automatically go into the physiological like aspect of the character.
Interesting. That would have been a nightmare to record and mic up if he's...
Oh yeah, especially since like when he would do the voice, he would be spitting it so much, which you can see in the movie. Like they kept his actual spit in the movie.
That's crazy.
Yeah, of course. Now people call Gollum the first motion capture character ever put to screen. This isn't actually fully true because it hadn't been done before, so they didn't have the technology for motion capture like on set. But what they did was they had him on set to perform the character with, you know, Frodo and Sam and all their scenes and just in general, all the scenes. And then he would be painted out and replaced with the CGI Gollum.
Okay,
so pretty much he served as like a basis for the artist to like pull from when it came to the physicality. And I also found it very funny that because they're just going to cover him with a CGI character, while all the other actors were given these beautiful costumes, they just gave him a pink onesie to act in on set.
I was going to say, they didn't even do green.
No.
Wow.
And it looks very funny if you look at like the behind the scenes videos and stuff.
We also have to talk about Ian McKellen having a breakdown talking to a tennis ball in The Hobbit.
Well, yeah. Well, we can mention that.
Because like
I was thinking we would mention that during the Hobbit episode, but...
Oh, we're going to watch
down.
The Hobbit?
I mean,
the three of them.
We could do it as a like so bad.
That's true.
Yeah.
I also think that's interesting because we had talked about that during.
Yeah.
For context, we watched all these movies with friend of the show Grace.
Yes. Who will make an appearance at some point.
Yes, sure. And we had a bunch of other people there, so we were all kind of like talking throughout the movies. And I don't remember who brought it up, but somebody brought up the Ian McKellen like having a breakdown with the tennis ball, and I just think that's a great like encapsulation of how far we've come from like actual movie making, where it's like, how in the hell are you expecting these actors to deliver a performance of their lifetime when they're talking to a fucking tennis ball on a stick?
Which, for those of you who don't know, like the breakdown was he was surrounded by green screens acting to tennis ball, and at some point he just started crying and he just started saying to himself, this isn't why I got into acting,
which is so sad,
especially when you consider that he was first and foremost, like obviously he since the 90s he's done a lot of film, but even to this day, like he is a theater actor. He is used to like being on a set with other actors, like, you know,
playing off of other people,
playing off the audience.
Yeah.
So just imagine like how hard it must be, especially for him.
That would have been, I would have gone crazy faster than that, probably.
Any actor does it.
Yeah.
Because like just surrounded by green.
And maybe that's why modern movies aren't classics.
Yeah.
Unless they're shot on actual sets.
I do think that modern movies do use CGI way too much. I don't think, like, obviously, in a lot of cases CGI is practical, but I think the best approach is like, you know, like the Chris Nolan approach where you use practical as much as you can and just do the rest with CGI.
Yeah, the Christopher Nolan approach where you set off an atomic bomb.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can.
And now he does probably go a little too overboard, but I'm just saying like that idea of...
No, exactly. You know, I get it. I just think that's a hilarious thing to do for a movie.
But yeah, so while Gollum was in motion capture on set, they did develop the technology for him to do motion capture like in a sound stage. But that did mean that like months later, he would have to recreate his performance surrounded by like nothing, you know, while wearing like a suit with tennis balls. But he did do a fantastic performance. And I think that's why, like, you know, the scene where Gollum's talking to himself?
Yeah.
I think that's why.
One of the many.
But the main scene, you know, the one where he's talking to himself and you see like the two sides.
Yeah, and you kind of get like a lower shot on him.
Yeah, that scene, I think the reason why the CGI in that scene especially looks so good was because they were able to use the motion capture from his soundstage for that specifically. And you can just see how good the animation is there. Beyond these, movie circus would continue to develop motion capture into King Kong and the Apes trilogy. Or now it's 4 movies, but we'll have to watch those.
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. Because those Planet of the Apes movies are so good.
Which I still cannot believe.
Yeah, I know.
I can't do monkey movies, just in general.
You believe me? Jennifer said the same thing. My mom said the same thing. Like, they were like...
Your mom likes them?
My mom... Well, okay, for reference, my mom doesn't like 99% of modern movies.
Yeah, she doesn't like Parasite, you said.
She watched those movies and she was like, these are actually pretty good like popcorn movies, which is really high praise for her.
That makes me actually kind of want to watch them.
Oh yeah, Jennifer kind of became like crazy about the Planet of the Apes movies because
Wow.
of those movies. Yeah, like it's really.
Yeah.
I assure you, it's really good to the point where Andy Serkis should have won a Best Actor like Oscar for those movies.
Andy Serkis was in.
Well, yeah, he plays Caesar, the main character.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like he developed it.
Yeah,
and
I
he
didn't
kind of-
realize like he was that involved.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was kind of he's like been at the forefront of developing this technology.
That's cool.
And obviously like Avatar came
Yeah.
out and all that stuff. Now there's a lot of stories with production. We do not have time to get into it. Again, I recommend watching like the behind the scenes documentaries they made. They're hilarious, all that stuff. There are a few things I do have to mention though, or else Lord of the Rings fans will kill me. The first is of course the Aragorn kicking the helmet story, which we explained to you on the day, right?
Yes, you
Yeah.
did explain to me because we watched that shot
Yeah.
and then I was like,
Oh yeah.
Oh.
For those of you who don't know, there was a scene where he's supposed to kick a helmet, a metal helmet, and he did several takes on it. And the last take, he kicks it, and Viggo Mortensen let out this yell, like heart-wrenching yell, and fell to the ground. And after that take, Peter Jackson was like, "That was so good, like that was the best take. We're gonna use that." And he was like, "How did you get to that emotion?" And Viggo Mortensen was like, "I just broke my toe on the helmet." Yeah, and this has come to be like a meme in the community where every single time someone new watches the movie, a Lord of the Rings fan has to tell them about it. And so that's like the meme, which
Nice.
I know you saw like on the day that we
Yeah.
watched those movies.
so you held up your end of the bargain as a
Exactly.
fan.
Yeah. We even like when that scene came up, someone was like, "Okay, who's gonna say it?" Yeah, which I loved. The second thing I didn't want to mention is Legolas's like crazy action moments. For instance, like killing the Mama Kill and the going down the stairs on the surfboard.
Yeah.
All that stuff. All of those moments were born out of the fact that Legolas or Orlando Bloom broke his ribs. So in the scene with the wargs, like the wolf thingies, when they're fighting them, do you remember how he gets on the horse a little weirdly? Like he spins on top of the horse?
Yeah.
The reason why they had to do that was because he just couldn't get on the horse on the day, just regularly. So they're like, well, we're going to have to use CGI. And they flipped him on. And Jackson saw that and he was like, I like this. We should have him do more like outlandish stuff like this because it looks cool. So they just had him like, they just added in him killing a whole Mama Kill by himself and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All because of a few broken ribs.
Interesting. Did he break them while shooting the movie?
He
Okay.
fell off a horse.
Jesus, what
Yeah.
is?
I know.
Did everybody get injured?
Pretty much, literally everyone got injured. Sean Astin stepped on a shard of glass in the scene where he's walking in the river.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I don't remember who, but someone got a big splinter. Like everyone got hurt on these movies.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I know Viggo Mortensen also like chipped a tooth and like put it back in with like glue to finish filming
my
before he went
God.
to the dentist. Yeah, that man was crazy.
Yeah.
The last story that I did want to mention was Boromir and the helicopter incident.
Yes, I did hear about this one as well.
Pretty much Sean Bean, before filming already, like was scared of helicopters. We're not scared. He just didn't like them. But they had an unfortunate incident with a plane where they almost crashed because there was a storm. So after that, he was like, you know what? I'm never getting in another helicopter ever again in my life. The problem was one of the days after that, they were filming like the mountain scenes where they're, trekking through the snow. And they're like, dude, how are you going to get there? Like, the only way to get there is in a helicopter. How are you going to get there? And he was like, you know what? I'll walk it. So he gets up at like 2 a.m. to be at the top of the mountain by like 11 a.m. or whatever. And his poor makeup lady has to like follow behind him with his makeup stuff. So it's pretty much just Boromir because he's in full costume. It's just Boromir walking up the mountain with his makeup lady in time to be up there. To film. So overall, principal photography ran for 438 days.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and again, they were filming all three movies at the same time.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even include like pickup shots that they did every year for every movie from 2001 to 2003, for issues. They were shot concurrently, and at any point in time, before I get into this, let me just say, in films, it's very typical to have more than one unit filming because, there are time constraints. So, a lot of times you'll have 2, maybe 3, maybe even 4, but that's very rare. On the set of Lord of the Rings, because they had to film so much, at any given time, there could be up to 7 units filming concurrently.
Wow.
And all of them were like feeding back to Jackson's like videos, so he could direct from one place while he was also directing one of those units.
Wow.
And because of that, obviously Jackson is the director, he is the vision, but there, you also had unit directors. So, everyone from Fran Walsh to Andy Serkis actually directed different units. And so I wanted to give a shout out to all the other directors on this set. And then they got into editing, which was also crazy because they changed a bunch of stuff too. Originally, Arwen was going to appear at Helm's Deep, but then they're like, that's going to cut into Eowyn's story, so they cut that out. Then Sauron was going to fight Aragorn at the end of the third one, but they cut that out because they're like, the focus should be on Frodo and the ring, not on a big battle. Like, that's not the point of why Aragorn's doing this. So there were like a lot of changes, but finally, like, they were able to, I think, pull them together cohesively. They brought in Howard Shore to score all three movies. And altogether, all three movies cost $281 million.
And how much did they make?
And they made, we'll get into that.
Okay.
Released 2001 to 2003. So Fellowship released, and it grossed so much money that by itself it made the whole trilogy profitable.
Wow.
Yeah. And Jackson had said, like, if it hadn't made that much money, like if it had failed, then Two Towers and Return of the King would have been the most expensive straight-to-video
Interesting.
movies ever made. But yeah, because Fellowship made $887 million.
In that money, like 2001 money.
In 2001
That's
money,
crazy.
Yeah. Two Towers made $951 million
Wow.
in 2002 money. And Return of the King made $1.15 billion in 2003 money. It became the second movie to make more than $1 billion after Titanic.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
They were big successes, yeah. And pretty much after the first movie came out, New Line, which was kind of like getting like, antsy, they were like, thank God, we're good. And of course, they were also critical successes,
Right.
including at the Academy Awards. Fellowship was nominated for 13 awards. They won 4, which were cinematography, makeup, score, and visual effects, which I think are all deserved. Interestingly enough, Two Towers got much less recognition at the awards. It was nominated for 6 only, which, I mean, is still a lot, but it's kind of crazy to me, like, how that is the one movie that barely got any nominations. It did win for sound editing and visual effects, though. Return of the King was really the movie that had the most success, at the awards ceremonies and all that, and critically. Well, not more. Like, critically, it wasn't like everyone saying this is so much better. It just at the awards, really, where it had the most success. And it became only the second movie after Titanic to win all of its nominations.
Oh, wow.
And it got nominated for 11 categories, and it won all 11
Is
of them.
that the movie that's won the most Oscars?
Well, it's actually tied with Titanic. That is also, Titanic also got nominated for and won 11.
Interesting.
And the interesting thing is that Bernard Hill is in both of those movies. It won all 11 of its awards. And while, it obviously won Best Picture, Best Directed, it won so many categories that obviously is deserved. There were one section of the categories where it really was looked over, and that was the acting categories. Only one person ever got an acting nomination from these films, and that was Ian McKellen for Fellowship for Best Supporting Actor, and that was it.
Interesting.
And I think that speaks to the fact that the fantasy genre, at least in Hollywood, is still viewed as like a children's thing. Like, it's the same way that animation is. And I honestly think that, not reprehensible, that's maybe too strong a word, but there's so many fantastic performances in this film that I think were absolutely award worthy, and I think should have not only been nominated but won. There we go. That's the background.
Wow. That's it. That's the episode,
hour
guys.
long background. Yeah, goodbye. Anyway, I guess let's get into them in the second hour of the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't written a bunch of stuff because I figured you were going to have a lot of information. First, I was going to call it an episode.
First, you're thinking of Star Wars.
Exactly. I have 2 questions for you that I wrote down. Do we know how Bilbo and Gandalf know each other?
Yes. So, I mean, that's really the background of The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's been so long since I...
And I'm going to get into it. The thing is, Gandalf has always the wizards sort of like went around and learned things, and
Yeah.
each wizard sort of had their own like set of things that they focused on. For instance, Saruman like would focus on lore and myth and stuff, like the knowledge of the history of Middle Earth. So that's how he kind of gets drawn into Sauron's plan and turns evil. So Gandalf, he focused more on like the nature and like that side of the world. And so because of that, like he would go to Hobbiton a lot and like get to know about the Hobbit. So he kind of was a known entity to the Hobbits, but they're like, he's just some old guy that does fireworks.
Yeah.
So he gets like Bilbo knows about him, but it isn't until Gandalf like Bilbo is like pulled on the adventure that they become friends, and like Bilbo understands that there's more to this world than just eating a lot of food.
And hanging out in Hobbiton, the Shire,
and smoking weed all day.
Exactly.
Yeah. What is your other question?
My other question is maybe one that's a little bit more subjective to you. Is Boromir bad?
No.
Okay.
I think he's just a flawed character.
That's kind of what I got too, because as he's dying, you're kind of like, wow, like he actually does care.
Yeah, no, he does care, and he knows he did wrong, and he knows that he was kind of like manipulated by the ring. And I think that does speak, because I think some people point out Lord of the Rings as being like, oh, it's so good and evil, like it's so like black and white, but I'm like, no, there's a lot more subjective elements to it.
Yeah.
Like obviously, yeah, it is more black and white than a lot of fantasy now, but that's because it was setting the basis for it. And there is still a lot of subjective elements and like a lot of humanity in it, and about how people are flawed, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what do you think of the film overall?
I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I think that this one would benefit from not watching the extended cut, because
I agree with that.
What was it, 45 minutes before we leave the Shire? And I was kind of like, what? Like the movie hasn't even started yet, which it's cool. The set design is really cool. And I like a lot of the performances and like the introductions. But there was a time where I was like, all right, we got to get moving a little bit more.
And I will say I totally agree with that. And actually, Peter Jackson agrees with that. He prefers the theatrical cuts of all the movies.
Oh, all of them?
Yes, which I don't agree with fully. Yeah. Which I'll explain. So for me, in my opinion, you need the extended cut of the third one.
That's also kind of what I gathered. Yeah.
Because like, how are you gonna cut out the death of Saruman? Like, you need like those scenes. For the second film, I think that you could cut out everything from the extended cut that's not in the theatrical cut, except for the flashback showing like Faramir and Boromir's relationship. I do think that's something that they should have kept in. But aside from that, I don't think any of the other extended cut things need to be there. And then Fellowship, that's the one where I'm like, yeah, nothing in the extended cut needed to be there. Just watch the theatrical cut. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So I do believe that that's the best version. And that's how I grew up watching it, watching the theatrical cut of both that one and Two Towers.
Okay. Yeah. Because, it takes halfway into the movie before we get introduced to the Fellowship.
And I feel like a lot of the stuff that is cut is a lot of moments from like the Hobbit part, like the beginning in Hobbiton. Yeah. And it really does slow it down. Like they don't have Bilbo like explaining what hobbits are, which I don't think you even need, because it's like, oh, you get it, you see them, right? And the way they live, and you get it. You don't need like voiceover to,
which I did enjoy. It's very like
it's
slow,
enjoyable.
It's a slow like kind of like easing in.
But it's like ultimately you don't need it. Like you've seen it once and you're like, that's enough. Yeah.
So it's good that it exists, but
I think it is, and obviously it's for the fans. Fans love it, which I think is great. It's fans doing what they do best, obsessing over something.
Right.
Hell yeah. But I do think that the theatrical cut is the stronger cut of this film. I also think that Fellowship is the strongest out of the three, to be honest. Like if you think about it theoretically, it's the most. I don't know. It's the most cohesive in some way.
I agree. And I also that one I don't know if it's my favorite. It's tied with the third movie.
That's an interesting thing, because while I think that Fellowship is the best theoretically, I do think that for me Return of the King is my favorite. It just like watching it, I'm like, it has faults, like too many endings, but regardless, I still love it, and it is my favorite. Yeah,
that was kind of like the joke at one point with Return of the King. Is like, well, it just ended. There's still an hour left,
and
then another ending happens. I was like, there's still an hour left.
Which I will say is, I think part partly due to the editing, because they do have like fades out, and I'm like, if you just took that out, it would help with that problem a little bit.
Yeah.
But then again, what do I know? I'm not an editor, so don't quote me on that. Even though I think it's the best out of the three, it's not my favorite.
Okay.
It's still like one of my favorites. It's my second favorite, to be honest. Which I guess brings us
leads number
to the
2.
Towers. Yeah.
I do want to mention also in the first movie, I really like kind of the buddy comedy aspect of it, because there's a lot of like very funny lines.
There is, and
throughout all 3 movies.
I think that's something that was kind of instrumental to the success, because I think this is the type of story where humor is necessary. And I think that Jackson brought a lot of great humor, especially like with Pippin and Mary. I love their scenes together because they bring comedy to the film and keep it from being too dark, especially Pippin. Like so many of his lines from this film they have become iconic. There's a lot of great ones. The way the camera moves in these movies, and I think why I'm bringing it up now is because I always think of it in the first film, but the way it like shoots through Isengard when they're like preparing the orcs and whatever, I just love this. The way this,
there are a lot of really cool camera like tricks and stuff. I still don't fully understand how they used forced perspective so much to make them so tiny. But like, you don't have to explain it to me if you don't want to.
I can if you want. Well, part of it was like body doubles, so they would have little people dressed up as the hobbits. For instance, in a lot of scenes where you see the back of the head of like a hobbit, that's not, one of the that's the little person, and vice versa, where like when it's the reverse shot, and for instance you see the face of Bilbo, but you see the back of Gandalf. That Gandalf is a tall person playing Gandalf. So they would use that a lot. But with the forced perspective, they had an issue where it's like, if you don't move the camera, then you're good with forced perspective. But if you move it, that breaks the illusion. So what they did was they did all the math, and they would make like moving sets that would move with the camera to keep the forced perspective.
That's insane.
Yeah, you can watch videos of them doing this.
How do you even figure that out? Like that's just crazy.
I don't know how they did it.
That's beyond me.
But it works so well. And that's something that they didn't do in the Hobbit movies. And to be honest, I think they're worse for wear for that. Like
they relied too much on the computers.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think they should have done it practically, because it works so well in the Lord of the Rings movies. And of course it gets easier later when you break up the characters up, and it's Sam and Bilbo together, or Sam and Frodo together, and Mary and Pippin together.
Then you just have to do the set.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is easier, I would assume.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but I liked this one. I gave this movie a 3.5.
Yeah, I will say, so we watched all these films back to back, which I don't think is the best way to get into these movies. I think it's really fun watching them all together if you have already seen them. And I'm happy we did go to the watch party because it was so much fun. Yeah. But I will say, I am interested to see if you would like them more if you saw them one by one separately. Because I do feel like at some point it gets overwhelming and it takes you out of it. Yeah, it does become overwhelming, but I also don't know that I am the biggest fantasy person. No, and and I'm not saying that like your score would go up or anything. Right. I just mean that, I don't know, I do wonder if that affected the way you viewed them maybe a little bit. Yeah, I'm sure it did. But that being said, obviously these films are not for like everyone. Like fantasy is just not for everyone. Yeah, which is what Jennifer said afterwards. Yeah. And she was like, well, I don't know that I even liked these. And we're like, well, you just spent 12, 13 hours. Yeah. So, and good on her. Yeah. No, she was like, she even said that if she saw them one by one, she was like, I probably would like them. Which, it's like a 3.5 or something. And I'm like, I totally get it. Like, fantasy is not for everyone. But she was like, I think, she said she got overwhelmed, which I was like, I totally see that. And that's why I even told her before we watched it that I was like, you probably won't like them that much because this is not the best way to view it. Yeah. So she did say that, she could see how seeing them one by one would make her like them more. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's why I will say to anyone that hasn't seen them, I would say watch them one by one, and honestly watch the theatrical cut of the first two. Yeah. I do think that would change my rating. That's also like when I eventually subjugate Jennifer to watching them again one by one over like several months, I guess. I'm gonna show her the theatrical cuts of the first two because there's no reason in my mind, at least, to watch the extended cuts. And now that we've seen the extended cuts, you can go. Yeah, exactly.
I enjoyed the first one a lot. I do think it did suffer from the fact that it's,
Yeah.
I don't know how much longer it is. It's like 45 minutes
It
longer.
is, yeah, it is 45 minutes.
That is a fair amount of time.
Because none of that 45 minutes is necessary.
Yeah.
I will say.
Yeah.
You
But
know-
I did think that one was really good, and it's a very good introduction. And I do think it is like very technically sound of
Yeah.
like, this is, I mean, we talked about this as well while watching, where it's like, what act are we in? And it's kind of like
Yeah.
each act has 3 acts.
Yeah.
And then inside of that, you can even like delve in more.
And
the trilogy functions as like 3
Yeah.
acts too.
And to that point, I think that with Lord of the Rings, I could see these films being a miniseries.
Yeah.
You know, it would translate well to that.
Yeah, I do think that the first movie though is the most clear like 3-act
Yeah,
structure.
definitely.
I feel like, and I feel like that'd be more clear with the theatrical cut.
And I think a reason why it kind of does get a little unclear in the next two is because you do have this splitting up.
Yeah.
So you kind of have 3 storylines in each film with 3 acts.
And the second movie is very much like, there's no, I mean, there is obviously like a resolution at the end
Yeah,
of it,
but
it's
it is a
very much
second
like
film.
it's still the rising,
Yeah.
like the rising action.
Which actually brings us to a point that I kind of saved, which is that Tolkien originally wanted to release Lord of the Rings as one book. That was his intention. He kind of split them into, you know how books will be split into sections that aren't like separate books. I don't remember what that's called, but it's like you have like chapter 1 through 10, and then it'll be like part 2, and then chapter.
Right. Yeah. It's generally a part.
So he did
Yeah.
that, and he called them books. So like inside Lord of the Rings, there are like 6 books spread throughout it. But his intention was for, you know, it all to be one book called The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Which is why you kind of have the confusion of like, oh, is there a semicolon between like Lord of the Rings and
Right.
Fellowship?
Right.
But they didn't do it because it was right after like World War II. And it would have been really expensive with like paper shortages and stuff like that. And it would have been over 1,000 pages long if it was all 3 together.
Yeah.
So that's why the publisher was like, we're going to release them as 3. So
Yeah.
I think maybe that's also why a reason behind why the second film kind of feels like an in-between.
We also do have to talk about the song before we move on to the
Yes.
second film, which is May It Be by Enya.
May It Be.
Written
Yeah.
by Enya and Roma Ryan and produced by Nikki Ryan. Those 2 Ryans are like her longtime collaborators.
Yeah.
This one was nominated for an Oscar, a Grammy, and a Golden Globe, and it lost all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Which is crazy
I saw.
because this is my favorite song out of the 3.
Really?
Well, technically 4 because we did the bonus one as well. This is a 4 for me. Enya's great.
Yeah,
and
I do really like Enya. Yeah,
I always forget about how good she is.
I think a
Shout
lot of
out
people
Ireland.
forget about her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my second favorite. And I
Okay.
gave this one a 4 too.
Okay. Yeah. Let's move on to the second
Move on.
film,
2 Towers.
The Twin Towers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which it was released in 2002, which is interesting.
Yeah, and everyone argues about which 2 towers are the 2 towers in this film.
Yeah. There's more than 2.
Yeah,
I'll tell you
There's
that.
a lot of towers in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that it's Isengard and Barad-dûr, which is Sauron's tower.
Think Jackson said as well. I think
Yeah.
Peter Jackson said in like when I was reading what
Yeah.
the 2 towers were, and I looked at them and I was like, I don't remember which specifically those are because everything
Pretty
is
much
kind of
the 2 evil towers.
Yeah.
That's how you can remember it.
yeah.
Yeah. That which is my view too. Like I 100% agree.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
This one is my least favorite. Definitely.
I agree.
It's good, but I feel like it suffers from the fact that it is the middle movie and
Yeah.
it feels like 1 has a very clear direction of what it is and 3 has a very clear direction, and this one is
It feels
just
kind
the
of
building
like
up.
a bridge.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
And
And
yeah.
this one also, this was the one that I felt the longest to me. Like the first
Yeah.
one is kind of like, it's long, especially the extended cut. But this one just felt like there were parts in it where just not a lot happened.
Yeah. And I will say, I think part of that is because we did watch the extended cut, but I think part of that is also the scenes between Frodo, Sam, and Faramir. I do feel like those scenes kind of do drag out. Because I personally love the Rohan stuff. I've always been a big fan of just the world of Rohan in general. That's honestly my favorite part of this world. So I think that those parts do work quite well, especially Helm's Gate, which we'll probably talk about in a second. But I do feel like the stuff with Faramir does just drag.
I agree.
Yeah.
I do think this is something I specifically noticed in 2 and 3 is that they do not, and I don't know whose problem this is. It's probably ultimately Peter Jackson's. I feel like you forget about some of the stuff that's happening because we spend so much time in one location. Like I think it was in the third movie where there was like probably at least an hour where we didn't even like see Frodo at all. And I was kind of like, what? Like, I forgot that even happened.
I know that part of the reason why it is like that is because Jackson tried to take into account where each character was in the story at the same time.
Yeah, so which I do appreciate.
Yeah, try to pace it like that. So, which I know it isn't really like that in the book. In the book, actually, you know how I told you how Tolkien split into books? The reason he did that is because at the point when the characters split off, he doesn't cut back and forth. For instance, in the second book, right, he tells a story of like Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn beginning to end. And then he goes back and tells the story of Frodo and Sam beginning to end. And then so it's cut up like that. Jackson was like, we can't do that, and he tried to integrate them. It just is hard when you're trying to make sure that all the stories are progressing at the same time in universe.
Yeah.
And I think the second one especially suffers from that.
Yeah.
I think the third one handled it a little bit better. I think the difficulties there is just less to do in this Frodo and Sam storyline.
Right. And that's the part where it kind of like, it doesn't fall apart for me, but it's kind of like, this is the main story and they're not even doing that much for a while.
It doesn't pick up until the third one, I would say, to be honest.
Yeah. So this movie for me is a 3.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still good. I still enjoyed it.
We also didn't give a rating for the last one, did we? Oh, I didn't give it.
I give it a 3.5.
I give the first one a 5.
I figured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say I give the second one a 4.5.
Ooh.
It is a step down, I think. It's still really good, though.
Yeah.
And I will say, if anything, well, obviously I will say Helm's Deep, I think, is the highlight of this film, in my opinion. That whole sequence is one of my favorite sequences. That being said, I think the true highlight of this film is Gollum. Just everything. I think Gollum is perfect in every single aspect.
Yeah. From
writing to performance to CGI. Like, I don't know. I think he kind of saves the Frodo and Sam parts a little bit.
I agree. Yeah. You get some fresh blood in there.
Yeah. And I think they do develop like his obsession and whatever with the ring very well and make you feel for him, which I think is like the most important part to get right about his character.
Exactly.
Yeah. But let's move on to Return of the King.
The song in this one we have to do, which is Gollum's song.
Gollum's song, yeah.
Emiliana Torini, who's Icelandic.
I thought she was Italian.
Yeah, her name sounds Italian, so I don't know. This one was written by Fran Walsh and Howard Shore and produced by Howard Shore. I gave this one a 3. It's nice, but it's not as good, I think, as Enya. Yeah. And this was originally supposed to be sung by Bjork.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know that. I gave the song a 2. I really don't like the song. I think it's, when it comes to, the melody and all that, it's good. What I really hate, and I apologize, but I really hate Torini's performance of the song. It's just not for me.
Interestingly, because I think I enjoyed her performance. I didn't, some of the lyrics I was kind of like, eh. Yeah. And ultimately, like, this isn't something I'm going to listen to again. I feel like the Enya one there's definitely a time and place where that can like slot into
100%
something.
Yeah. With this song, I'm honestly like, I don't want to listen to this.
Yeah.
I remember I would turn off the credits of this film because I was like, I don't want to listen to the song.
Wow.
Yeah, I just really dislike it, to be honest. Which it is what it is.
Now we can move on to the third movie.
Return of the King, baby.
Return of the King. This one, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it was very enjoyable. Yeah. This is also a 3.5 for me.
Yeah, this is a 5 for me.
I assumed.
Yeah, this is my favorite film.
Yeah, I feel like this one is really good. It's very strong, and it has the identity that the second movie lacks, where it's like you have a goal that you're working towards.
And it's interesting because this film kind of is 3 hours of culmination.
Yes.
I remember we talked about this at the viewing where this film is pretty much like big moment to big moment to big. It's like all big moments.
Because we were talking about we're watching one of the battles. Yeah. And Grace is like, there's still another. There's still the final battle. And we're like, what? And then we pause it and there's an hour and a half left. Yeah. And it's like, oh my God, what else could happen in this movie?
Honestly, I think that's why this film is so many people's favorite. Because it's just so much like dopamine from these amazing moments.
We're so back
everything
over and over again, which we were screaming.
Yeah, we're so back. Well, everything from the charge of Rohan at the battlefield to like the lighting of the beacons, like there are all these moments that I think are perfect even if the film overall isn't perfect, it has so many perfect moments in it
Yeah.
that take it on to another level for me. That charge is still one of my favorite like scenes in general. I will rewatch that on YouTube on a monthly level.
Yeah, I loved you have like the big ass army, and then you have the other army coming in from the side, and then you have the third army coming in from the back, and it's
then
like,
finally
this is crazy.
You have the dead army at the
And then
very
you have
end.
the
that
pirates,
just, like kills everyone.
the ghost pirates or whatever.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I remember how upset people got when they let the ghost pirates go, and there was another battle. They're like, wait a second, why don't you use
need
them
the
for
ghosts,
that?
yeah.
But Aragorn promised.
Yeah, I did really enjoy this one. I thought as we were nearing the end, Grace had said that there was a part that made her stand up and like scream at the TV. And I thought it was going to be, after she said that, I was like, Frodo's not going to give up the ring.
Yeah.
And he's going to kill himself, is what I thought.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
He didn't kill himself, but he did not give up the ring.
Want to give up the ring.
Which, I mean, I feel like you need that moment
right
for his character arc to work.
I mean, it makes sense.
The parallel of film and Gollum.
Yeah, and you have him like falling apart throughout all of the movies and looking.
And it also brings the idea that Bilbo's pity when he didn't kill Gollum helped them complete the quest, because Gollum was instrumental to the destruction of the ring. Even though that's the total opposite of what he wanted.
Right.
So it also brings that moment full circle, which is kind of brought up in the first film, where Gandalf is like, we don't know what he will do. Like, he could help us. And he does, not only by leading them to Mount Doom, but also by actually, in a way, is helping Frodo get rid of the ring in the end.
Yeah.
Man, just Armenians always have the tragic stories.
Yeah. I think that's the 4th or 5th Armenia reference this episode, which is good.
Yeah, maybe a couple more. I'm going to see how many I can string in before we finish this episode.
I don't know. I don't know if this one's my favorite or not. I feel like I need to watch the first one with the theatrical cut.
And I could totally see that being your favorite.
Yeah.
Like the theatrical cut version of that.
Yeah, and I'll decide at some point when I watch that again.
I was also wondering when Grace said that she stood up at one moment, if maybe she stood up at the parts with Shelob just because of how disgusting Shelob is.
Yes, that is.
Which they did that part so well.
Yeah, that is nasty and terrifying.
I know. Well, Jackson also, I think, has arachnophobia, so he based it off his like fears of spiders.
That's fair.
Yeah, which I think works. Like you can see that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Based on how terrifying that thing, that giant spider is. And they also, I remember at the thing, they brought up a good point that it's interesting how two of the biggest, literary franchises have giant spiders in them: Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings.
We have the song from this one, Into the West by Annie Lennox. I assume this is your favorite song.
This is my favorite song.
Yeah, I didn't like this one.
Really?
I don't like her singing.
This is the song that I can listen to on repeat, actually.
This is a 2 for me.
That's crazy. This is a 4.5 for me.
I knew this was going to be your favorite, but I didn't think it was going to be that high. This one's written by Annie Lennox, Fran Walsh, and Howard Shore, and produced by Howard Shore. And it won a Grammy, a Golden Globe, and an Oscar.
Yeah, this is the one that won everything. It does make me wonder, like, if you would like the Eurythmics. If you
I've
didn't
heard
like
a few of their
singing.
songs, and they're good. I feel
so
like
it's just in this
style just did not work for me.
I just love it.
I
think it just works so well for them. It is very soulful, which I do kind of feel like fits the end of the films, just based off the fact that Frodo just went to heaven in a ship.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you, did you see that coming?
I didn't see him leaving necessarily, but I feel like it makes sense.
Yeah, after everything he's been through. Yeah. And kind of the idea that he could never fully recover from the ring.
Yeah. I do find that interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting. Fran Walsh kind of zeroed in to the fact that both Gollum and Frodo's storylines, especially in the second film, but just overall too, is really kind of a metaphor for addiction, which is interesting to think that the two characters that did have that both kind of don't survive in a way, where Gollum dies obviously, and then Frodo is kind of so damaged where he has to leave to go to heaven,
and Bilbo has to leave as well.
And Bilbo too,
who is also affected by the ring.
Yeah, not as much, but still affected.
I did want to ask you, I had one other question written down here, which I don't know, there's a few things we talked about, how Arwen is like all of a sudden dying, and it's like, why? Which, you know, but the other thing that didn't make sense to me when we were watching is, why does Denethor care that Faramir's dead when he does not care about him in any way, and was like, I wish you weren't my son, or whatever he says.
The thing with Denethor is it is kind of different in the books. He isn't like so outright, I hate you, Faramir. But he, like, there is that. It just kind of more subtle. And I get why they made it a little bit more on the surface for the films. It's because, you know, you don't have as much time. The thing with him is it's kind of the idea of like a man that used to be a great man that's kind of fallen by his own pride, and also kind of manipulated by Sauron. Because do you remember in how Saruman has that like seeing orb thing?
Yeah.
So in the books, you find out that Denethor also had one of those. But they're dangerous to use because they're all unaccounted for. It's kind of like Sauron has stolen a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Because they used to be safe in like the olden days, and there were 7 of them, I think. And like the king of men, you know, like all the kings had them, and they would talk to one another. It was kind of like a way of, you know, working together.
Yeah.
But then, you know, Sauron stole
We
them.
get on my video call with my boys on our orb. Yeah.
Yeah, to call in, guys, we got a problem. But yeah, so it's pretty much, you know, Denethor thinks that he can see the future, which is kind of in the films too, by looking at it. What he doesn't realize, though, is that he's being used by Sauron. So I think that also plays into it, where he's just not stable mentally anymore.
Because then he runs off a cliff on fire, which is pretty sick as well.
That's a sick shot.
Yeah.
Which people have kind of pointed out that if you think about it, doesn't make sense, because the place where they are in the burial is really far away.
Yes, it's
so he's like
really
running for
long.
like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But it just looks so cool that it doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think, you know, the whole part with him and Faramir is an old man really losing his mind. That's, I think, why he reacts to...
Yeah. I was just surprised how like fast it was, how he went from like, I hate you, go die, to I'm so sad you died.
Yeah. In the books, it is more subtle.
Yeah.
And also, for instance, like in the books, he doesn't just give up fighting. He does, you know, plan to fight back against Sauron. It's just that he has kind of given up, and he still expects to die. Like, again, in the movies, they simplified that and kind of pushed it, made it more obvious and pushed it to the edge, which I understand why, because it's a film. You know, you need, you know, you don't have the time for that. But yeah, I think it's just that he's kind of lost his mind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention, there is actually a very big change in the book. In the book originally, Saruman does not die at the beginning of, you know, of the story of the third one. The hobbits return to Hobbiton after they've saved the world, and they find that it's been overrun with like these thugs that are ruled by Saruman, and he's alive, and he's in Hobbiton. He's kind of destroying things. And that's, you kind of see that in Sam's vision in the first film that Galadriel shows him. The reason why Tolkien had this in the books was the idea that, you know, even if you think that your world is safe, it really isn't. You know, playing off that idea. That is kind of mentioned where the hobbits are like, oh, we don't have to do anything. Like, let the big folk deal with the problems. But it's like, no, eventually it comes to you too. But then it was also a way to kind of show the, you know, the character arcs of the 4 hobbits, where they all kind of fight back and save their own home.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are like angry about this not being in the film, because it is kind of like a character culmination for Pippin, Merry, and Sam, less so for Frodo, because it is kind of with the ring. Now I totally understand why they cut it out of the film, because that would be another like 40 minutes.
And it also feels like you have to get another movie to get to that Hollywood ending.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I will say, I do wish that we had some version of this, because I love it in the book, and it makes sense in the book to have it, but I do understand that it just would not work.
And I do think that that is something like that you have to take into account when reading stories in different mediums, you know, like
it won't ever cross exactly.
Right. Yeah. And so I don't know, when you explain that, I feel like I'm okay with that. And I feel like,
and I'm also fully okay with it.
Yeah.
Like, I do wish we had a version of that, just because I would want to see it, you know, but I'm also,
and I don't,
like,
I like a Hollywood ending, unfortunately, you know,
because it's effective. Like, it's there's a reason why it's the Hollywood ending.
Right.
And it would be out of place to have that ending in the film. You know, that would just be another long ending, and it just wouldn't work.
Yeah,
so
it'd be like the 7th ending of the...
Yeah, exactly.
You got to fade to black before that happens.
Yeah. We should also release an extended cut of this episode. Not
Yeah,
kidding.
we should.
Like
oh my God.
another 2 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what else to say about the movies
Well,
because
what did you rate the third one?
third
we
one's
talk
also a
about this?
3.5.
Yeah. So kind of across the board, or what did you give the second one?
Second one was a 3.
Okay.
So yeah.
This one is also
So 1 and 3 are
5 for me.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is interesting how even though like the ratings themselves are different, it's kind of the same, you know.
Yeah, the same idea.
Yeah.
It's not my first introduction into fantasy, but it is definitely like this like style of fantasy.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah,
I meant
I-
more like difference between like this type of fantasy and like Star Wars fantasy, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. And I think these are really good movies. Obviously, like, I mean, I gave Mulholland Drive a 3.5, so that's something I enjoy,
Yeah.
you know?
No, and I
Like,
know your 3.5 means a lot, like a higher score than my 3.5, for
Yes.
instance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I could see one of these going up to a 4, and I feel like
It'll
It-
probably be Fellowship, right?
I feel like it might be Fellowship if I watch the theatrical
yeah.
cut.
Exactly.
So we'll see, which is why I lean towards that one being my favorite. So it'd be 1,
Yeah.
3, 2.
Which makes sense. I do think, I don't know, I do think that one would be your favorite. If I think about it.
Are you 3, 1, 2 for your ranking?
Yeah.
Okay.
3,
yeah.
1, 2. And again, that's just because I just freaking love the last one so much.
Yeah.
You know, like I do think that the first one is the best when it comes to, you know, like if you think about it theoretically.
Right. Yeah. And I do enjoy that is like our introduction into the world. I love a good, like, to me, it feels like a pilot episode. And when you can like nail that pilot episode and like explain everything that you need to know, I feel like it's really well
Especially
done.
with that prologue. Like that gives you all the info you need in like 10 minutes
Right.
for the whole world. Also, I just wanted to say, I want to be a freaking hobbit.
Yeah, it'd be kind of fun.
I want to live in a hobbit hole and just eat all day.
I'd love to eat.
That sounds perfect.
I'd eat right now, in fact.
Honestly, I'm really hungry right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I feel like
That's the end of the podcast.
I feel like I'd like to be an elf.
I mean, yeah, obviously that would also be really cool.
I'd love to be hot.
I think I just
have long hair.
have
which I
long
do.
hair, wear flowy clothes.
Yep.
And
Be
have
blonde.
pointy ears. Yeah, be blonde. Yeah, without dyeing, be blonde.
Yes. Yeah.
And dyeing isn't like dyeing your hair, not.
Yes.
Killing yourself.
DYE. Yeah.
I would be an elf too. That would be pretty cool. I'm just like I want to eat. That's why. I just love food. That's why I want to be a hobbit.
Yeah, you don't
know?
need like the little square of bread, whatever it's
Yeah.
called. Yeah. And fill you
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, I could eat 4 of them like Pippin did.
Exactly.
I wouldn't mind being a man though. Like if you're living there and
Yeah, I feel like you're the most vulnerable as a
you
man.
are, you definitely are.
Yeah.
And just being an elf is so freaking cool. You could do a little skateboard trick.
You don't
with
want to
the
be a dwarf?
shield. Being a dwarf would be fun. I'm just like, I would want to live on top of a mountain versus inside of one.
That's
you
true.
know?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of just being in a dark. No, like obviously it's not dark. They have lights, and
Right,
windows and
yeah.
stuff, but it's kind of like it is kind of darker, and you're mining stuff, and I'm just like, that's
Yeah.
cool, but
That's not me.
it's-
I want to
yeah,
be
it's
in
not me.
a like a river valley.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or like up in the trees. Although I'm scared of heights, so maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's why I am just a hobbit. I want to be like in a comfy house, which I love the design of the hobbit holes. Like I want my
Yes.
house to look like that.
Very cool. Circular doors we mentioned
Yeah.
as well as something that should make a comeback
Yeah.
or make an appearance, I guess. I don't know if we've had circular doors.
You can visit Hobbiton in New Zealand.
You can.
Like they built it for real.
Which friend of the show, Grace, did and told us.
She'll have
Yeah.
to come on the podcast and tell us about it.
Yes.
When we rewatch these movies.
Yeah, in next year or whatever.
Yeah.
When we do another marathon. Yeah.
Oh God. I don't know if I can survive that, to be honest.
But yeah, I mean, I think these are really great films.
Yeah.
And I think we made the correct choice of not trying to pair like an album with it.
It would have been too much. We're already like close to 2 hours.
Oh my God, yeah, we are.
So yeah.
This is going to be even longer than the Ordinary People 22 a Million episode.
This is going to be the longest. I feel like this might be the longest episode for a long time.
Yeah.
Unless we do like,
I think we're getting back to normal now after
yeah.
these.
Yeah, it'll go back to closer to 1 hour.
Yeah, but I really did enjoy these, and I would like
And
to
I'm
watch
happy
them
that-
again.
That's
but
the most important thing, that you're like, oh, I would watch them again.
yes, but not in a row, and not not the extended cuts.
Well,
for
because
all
like
of them.
even me, like these films are some of my favorite films. Even like that's too much for like I can't.
Yeah.
Like, it was a great experience. I think everyone should experience it once in their lives, in their life. But I can't. I'm like, I can't do it another time.
Yeah.
It's too much.
There's a reason that Grace was the only person who went to or who hosted the first one and then was also there for the second one. It's an entirely new group of people.
I don't know how Grace did it, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, they're good movies. And we got some food too.
And also good books too.
Yes, I would really like to read the
different.
books.
They are very different. And I know some fans read it and they're like, oh, it's so different. But I'm like, yeah, it's a book. It's obviously not going to be the same.
I do find it interesting that both the books and the movies are critically acclaimed because that's hard to do.
It's very rare. And I mean, I will say, to just say like some fans read them and don't like them.
Right.
But I will say that's a very small percentage.
Yeah, and I mean, I think
that's kind of crazy that, fans of the movies will read the book and like it too, because I feel like that doesn't typically happen. Like whichever one you see first, I feel like you tend to dislike the other one. But in this case, that's not really the case.
And also, generally, I feel like the book is just better than the movie. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Well, in some cases, I think
there was only one.
For instance, like Ordinary People, I've heard is better in the film. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
maybe
of the things that I've read, there was only one book where I was like, this isn't as good as the movie. And I don't remember what it was. Don't ask me. I'm sorry.
I was about to ask.
Yeah. I, for some reason, think that Ben Stiller is in the movie, but I don't know for sure.
Zoolander? So. No, but that was which we should also watch because I've never seen that movie.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, on ending on Zoolander.
ending on that note, I mean, feel free to watch all three of these movies and then
back to back,
and then watch or listen to the podcast.
Yeah,
and
listen to the end credit songs.
Yes, and the credits as well, where we like stopped the movie and there's 30 minutes left, and it's like, okay.
Well, I think even in the extended cuts, I think even the credits are extended. Yeah, because they added like the name of people in fan clubs and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah,
which I think was very fun.
That is cool.
Going to release it on DVD, why not do it? But that's also why I like the DVDs, the special edition versions from like 2003, like when their films were released. That's why the movie is split on 2 DVDs because it's so long.
Yeah, but these are really good, and I very much enjoyed this and would like to watch them again in a year when I have the stamina to make it through them.
So now the Lord of the Rings fans will not be going after you because you did like them.
Yes, I did. And I feel like my scores will go up with more watches.
And even if they don't, like a 3.5 is still good.
Yes,
for you,
that is good for me.
Yeah. Catch us next week for the next episode.
For sure. Yeah. It should be
hear
a good
us
one.
Recover a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. And follow us on Instagram.
Yes.
Leave a comment. Also, you can send us an email if you want to tell us about how much you love the podcast.
Send us a DM as well.
Yeah, or DM. Or if you want to tell us about how much you hate it. That's also cool.
Yeah, and how wrong one of us is on certain things.
Yeah. Yeah. So email us at upcpod@gmail.com. And catch you next week.
Yes, we'll see ya.
Loader fans.